If you're a Libra and something in your chest tightened the moment you pressed play, this is for you. Not because you were searching, not because the algorithm found you, but because you've been carrying an imbalance no one ever named. And today, it wants to be seen. Have you felt it? That quiet tension you can't explain. Like you've been waiting for a response that never came. A reply, a correction, a sign that someone, somewhere, finally noticed what was unfair. This message isn't here to comfort you. It's here to wake you up. Because when the scales shift for Libra, they don't move loudly. They move precisely. And they move now. So stay with me. Breathe. Trust the part of you that already knows something is approaching. And before we go any further, tell me in the comments if this found you at the exact moment you needed it. Make sure you're subscribed, not for me, but so you don't miss what happens next, because what's unfolding for you doesn't arrive twice. Stay with me for a moment, Libra. Not because you need answers right away, but because there's a quiet recognition happening between us now. I want you to notice something. The way your body softened just a little when you kept listening. The way your breath slowed without you telling it to. That's not coincidence. That's resonance. You didn't arrive here searching for reassurance. You arrived because some part of you has been waiting to be acknowledged, not praised, not rescued, just seen. You've spent a long time balancing things no one else noticed were heavy, keeping the peace, holding space, letting things slide, even when they shouldn't have, not because you were weak, but because you believed fairness would eventually find its way back on its own. And maybe for a while, it didn't. There were moments you questioned yourself, not loudly, just quietly, in the background of your days. Moments when you wondered if doing the right thing actually mattered, if staying calm, measured, and gracious was worth the cost. If anyone would ever look back and say, yes, we see it now. Yes, you were right to wait. That's why this moment feels different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just precise. Like a scale that's been off by the smallest degree finally correcting itself. You may not hear the click, but you feel the shift. And here's the part I want you to hear clearly. This isn't about proving anything. You're not being asked to relive old stories or reopen wounds. This is about alignment. About life responding to the integrity you carried when no one was watching. Think of it like this. When balance is restored, it doesn't rush in shouting. It arrives calmly, with paperwork, with names, with details that suddenly make sense. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to force clarity. All you're being asked to do right now is stay present. Because sometimes the universe doesn't send a sign, it sends a person. Sometimes it doesn't send a miracle. It sends a message that feels ordinary at first, until you realize it changes the way you stand in your own life. If you've been feeling that subtle pressure lately, like something unresolved is finally ready to surface, trust that feeling. It doesn't come from fear, it comes from readiness. You're not late, you're not behind. You're right on time for a correction that required patience, maturity, and restraint. Qualities you mastered long before you were rewarded for them. So don't rush ahead in your mind. Don't try to guess how this unfolds. Just stay here with me, in this calm space between knowing and receiving. Because once balance begins to return, it keeps moving, quietly, steadily, toward the places in your life that were left unfinished. And in the next moments, we're going to talk about what that return actually looks like. Not in theory, not in symbols, but in the very real ways life reaches back out to restore what should never have been left unanswered. Just listen. The story's already moving. Let me say this gently, Libra. What's moving toward you now isn't confusion, it isn't chaos, and it isn't a mistake. I know how careful you are. How your mind immediately checks the details, how you've learned to question anything that arrives unexpectedly, especially after so many years of silence. But this isn't that kind of moment. This is the kind that doesn't rush, the kind that arrives with intention. You may notice it first as a subtle interruption in your routine, a name that doesn't belong to your present life, a notification that makes you pause instead of swipe away. Something about it feels neutral at first, professional, almost ordinary, and that's exactly why it matters. Because when correction arrives, it doesn't announce itself with drama. It comes through structure, through systems, through people whose role is to represent what once went quiet. I want you to hear this clearly. This is not someone reaching out by accident, not someone dialing the wrong number, not a misunderstanding that needs to be brushed aside. It's a reconnection, a line that was cut too early, a process that stalled without explanation, a record that was left unfinished and is now being reopened, not emotionally but formally. And I know there's a part of you that hesitates, that part that learned to keep expectations low, that part that says, don't get hopeful yet, just wait, just observe. That instinct protected you once, but it doesn't need to carry this moment. Because this isn't about hope, it's about response. For a long time, you did the right thing without feedback. You followed the rules, you stayed composed. You trusted that fairness didn't need to be forced. And when nothing came back, you adjusted. Quietly, gracefully, you kept going. What's happening now is not a reward for patience. It's a correction for imbalance. Systems don't feel guilt. They don't apologize in words. They correct through action, through documents, through acknowledgements that show up on paper before they ever reach the heart. And that's why this moment may feel strangely calm instead of exciting. Your nervous system recognizes it as something real, something solid, something that doesn't need persuasion. If there's a small voice inside you saying, "This feels different," trust that voice. It's not fear speaking, it's recognition. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to explain your past. You don't need to prepare a case in your mind. What's returning doesn't require you to prove your worth. It already assumes it. So if and when that contact arrives, let yourself stay grounded. Let yourself listen without bracing. Let yourself receive information without shrinking or overthinking. You're not stepping into conflict, you're stepping into resolution. And the most important thing to understand is this: what's being restored now isn't just something external. It's your relationship with fairness itself, with trust, with the belief that balance can return without you having to sacrifice your peace. As we keep moving forward together, we're going to look at what this return actually carries beneath the surface. Not just what changes on paper, but what begins to soften inside you once something long delayed finally responds. Stay close. There's more light ahead than you might expect. Let's slow this down together, Libra, because what's coming into focus now isn't meant to be rushed. It's meant to be understood. You might be imagining a letter as something dramatic, heavy paper, formal language, a moment that demands a reaction. But what's approaching you doesn't arrive with pressure. It arrives with clarity. Think of it more like this: a quiet envelope placed on a table. No urgency in the way it sits there, just certainty, the kind that waits for you to be ready to look. And when you do, you realize it isn't about one thing. It's about many small things that were never given their proper ending. Moments you accepted without closure. Details you were told to forget because it was easier for everyone else. You've lived long enough to recognize that feeling. That strange moment when something from the past resurfaces, not to reopen pain, but to correct the record. This is where the meaning lives. Because the truth is, Libra, there were chapters in your life that paused without explanation. Funds that stalled. Agreements that dissolved quietly. Benefits you assumed slipped through the cracks because no one followed up. You told yourself it was fine. You told yourself it wasn't worth the energy. You chose balance over confrontation. And you were right to do so at the time. But balance doesn't mean forgetting. It means trusting that what belongs in alignment will return when the conditions are right. This is not about loss being reversed overnight. It's about acknowledgement finally catching up. It's about something official stepping forward and saying, "This was left unfinished. This deserves to be addressed." And I want you to hear this part clearly. What's being returned may look practical on the surface. Numbers, documents, decisions revised. But underneath that structure is something far more personal. It's recognition. Recognition that you were patient without being passive, that you held grace without abandoning yourself, that you walked away from conflict not because you didn't deserve more, but because you trusted fairness to move on its own timeline. For a long time, that trust felt like silence. But silence doesn't mean absence. Sometimes it means something is being prepared quietly, out of sight, until it can arrive cleanly and without chaos. This is one of those moments. You may feel a mix of emotions when you realize what the letter carries. Relief, confusion, a softness you didn't expect, maybe even grief for the years you thought were simply gone. Let all of that exist. None of it is wrong, because this isn't about reclaiming something aggressively. It's about receiving what was always meant to come back in a balanced way. No chasing, no proving, no needing to raise your voice, just a correction that speaks for itself. And as this understanding settles in, you might notice something shifting inside you. A quiet exhale, a sense that something long held can finally loosen its grip. That's important, because what returns on paper is only the beginning. What returns in you is the deeper story. And as we continue, we're going to gently explore what happens when recognition arrives, not just externally, but internally. When fairness doesn't just show up in form, but begins to heal the place where you once questioned your own worth. Stay right here. The next part moves even closer to the heart of this. There's something I want to say softly, Libra. Because this part of the story lives in places you rarely let anyone see. You didn't stop believing in fairness all at once. It happened slowly. So quietly that even you didn't notice the moment it changed. At first, you trusted that doing the right thing would be enough. That balance would return on its own. That if you stayed calm, measured, kind, life would eventually respond in kind. And when it didn't, you adjusted. Not out of bitterness, out of self-preservation. You learned how to lower your expectations without lowering your standards. You watched others receive recognition, apologies, second chances, while you told yourself you didn't need those things. Not because you didn't deserve them, but because hoping began to feel heavier than letting go. So you folded that hope carefully, tucked it away, and kept moving. Most people never saw that part of you. They saw the composed exterior, the one who kept things fair, the one who smoothed tension before it became conflict, the one who carried the weight so the room could stay calm. What they didn't see were the nights when the quiet felt too loud. When you replayed conversations you never had, questions you never asked, moments when you wondered if being understanding had slowly taught the world how to overlook you. You woke up some mornings with that dull ache in your chest. Not sadness exactly, more like a sense of being misplaced, as if something essential had been set aside and forgotten. And still, you chose grace. You chose silence not because you had nothing to say, but because you understood how easily words can fracture what took years to hold together. You protected harmony even when it came at your expense. That was your strength, and also your burden. Here's what matters now. None of that was wasted. Every time you chose not to react, you were refining something inside yourself. Every time you walked away instead of escalating, you were preserving your integrity. You weren't shrinking, you were containing. And containment has a limit. There comes a moment when the heart can no longer carry unanswered weight without asking for release. That moment doesn't arrive with anger. It arrives with clarity. This is that clarity. You're not revisiting the past to punish it. You're touching it now because you're finally strong enough to stand without compensating for others. Strong enough to let fairness speak without you translating it into silence. If there's a tenderness in you right now, let it be there. That tenderness is not weakness. It's proof that you cared deeply, even when it cost you. And here's the quiet truth. People who learn to carry imbalance with grace often forget they deserve balance too. You didn't forget. You just waited until the moment it could return without breaking you. As this realization settles, you may feel something loosening. A knot you didn't know you were holding. A breath you haven't taken fully in years. That's important. Because what's coming next isn't about revisiting what hurt. It's about understanding what your body and spirit already sensed long before your mind had language for it. There's a reason you felt unsettled before anything happened. A reason your intuition stayed awake even when hope went quiet. And as we move forward, we'll gently listen to what that inner knowing has been trying to tell you. Not in fear, but in preparation. Just stay here. The story is about to move inward. Let me come a little closer here, Libra. Because this part of the story lives in your body, not your thoughts. Before anything changed on the outside, something shifted inside you. You felt it without knowing why. A restlessness that didn't match your circumstances. A tension that appeared on ordinary days with no clear cause. You might have woken in the middle of the night, heart alert, mind quiet. Not panicked, just awake. As if something had tapped you gently from the inside and then gone silent again. During the day, there were moments when the world looked the same, but you didn't feel the same standing in it. A subtle sense that something was approaching. Not threatening, not exciting, just inevitable. And you probably asked yourself if you were imagining it, if it was stress, if it was just the weight of time catching up. But it wasn't. Your body was listening long before your mind had language for it. That's how intuition works for someone like you. It doesn't shout. It adjusts the balance quietly and waits to see if you notice. Libra energy is tuned to harmony at a level most people never reach. You feel imbalance the way others feel noise. Even when nothing looks wrong, your system knows when something is off, when a truth has been delayed, when fairness is pending, not denied. That unease you felt wasn't anxiety. Anxiety scatters. This was focused. This was precise. It was your inner scale sensing a correction in motion. You may have felt drawn to pause more often, to breathe a little deeper, to pull back from unnecessary conversations, not because you were tired, but because something in you was preparing space to receive. That's an important distinction. When the soul senses an approaching resolution, it signals the body first. It loosens certain attachments. It heightens awareness. It brings you into the present moment without explanation. That is not fear. That is readiness. You were not bracing for impact. You were clearing room. And here's the part I want you to take in gently. Your intuition did not wake you up to warn you of loss. It woke you up because something long suspended was beginning to move again. The balance you thought you had made peace with never being restored was quietly recalibrating itself. Not emotionally, energetically, practically. That is why the signs felt neutral rather than dramatic. A steady alertness, a calm watchfulness, the sense that you should pay attention without knowing what you were waiting for. You didn't need to act. You didn't need to search. You just needed to stay present. And you did. That alone tells me something about where you are now. You are no longer running from uncertainty. You are capable of sitting with it without losing yourself. That's growth most people never name. As this awareness settles, notice how your body responds right now. The shoulders easing, the breath slowing, the quiet recognition that something is aligning rather than unraveling. That is your confirmation. Because what comes next does not arrive through intuition alone. It moves from feeling into form, from inner knowing into outer acknowledgement. And as we continue, we are going to gently follow how that inner signal begins to take shape in the real world, how what your body sensed first finds its way into clarity, response, and resolution. Just stay with the rhythm. You don't need to rush this. The balance is already moving toward you. There's a moment I want you to recognize, Libra. It's subtle, almost easy to miss. But once you feel it, you never forget it. It's the moment you realize that what's returning to you isn't about gain, it's about relief. For so long, you've been measured, careful, fair even when it cost you something. You learned how to carry weight without showing strain, how to accept outcomes that never quite sat right, simply because pushing back felt heavier than letting it go. That doesn't make you passive, it makes you principled. And now, something is shifting that principle back toward you. Quiet justice doesn't arrive with an announcement. It doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't need applause. It shows up the way truth always does when it's finally ready, calm, undeniable, grounded. You may notice it first as a feeling rather than an event, a soft release in your chest, a sense that you no longer have to explain yourself internally, no longer need to replay old moments to see where you went wrong, because deep down, you know now. You didn't. What's returning carries something deeper than compensation. It carries recognition. The kind that doesn't say your name out loud, but lets you feel seen without effort. Seen for the times you stayed composed when it would have been easier to react. Seen for the way you chose balance over control. Seen for the patience you gave freely, even when no one promised it would come back. This is justice that doesn't seek revenge. It doesn't revisit the past to reopen wounds. It simply corrects the imbalance and moves forward. That's why it feels different from everything you imagined. There's no rush of adrenaline, no urge to prove anything, just a deep internal yes. Yes, this is right. Yes, this is aligned. Yes, this should have happened. And maybe for a moment, there's grief there too. Grief for the years you spent carrying something that was never yours to hold. Let that grief pass through gently. It's not here to pull you back. It's here to remind you how much strength it took to get here intact. This is the moment Libra steps out of the role of the one who balances everyone else, and into the role of the one who is finally balanced. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to justify your choices. You don't need to shrink to keep the peace. Peace is finding you now. And notice how this justice doesn't harden you. It softens you. It gives you permission to breathe more fully, to take up your rightful space without apology. That is real restoration, not the kind that changes your status, the kind that changes your posture in the world, the way you stand, the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. As this settles, you may feel lighter without knowing why, as if something you've been carrying quietly slipped off your shoulders while you weren't looking. That's not coincidence. That's release. And as we keep moving, there's one more layer waiting to be understood. Because when something meaningful returns, it also asks a question, not out loud, but deep within. What will you build now that you no longer have to carry the old weight? Stay with me. We're about to step into that answer together. Let's take this part slowly, Libra, because what returns to you now carries weight, not the kind that burdens, the kind that asks for wisdom. When something is restored after a long delay, there's a quiet temptation to rush backward, to touch the places that once hurt, to prove that you finally can, that you finally have. But I want you to pause with me right here, just for a breath. You've already lived the chapter where survival required sacrifice, where keeping the peace meant absorbing the cost, where balance depended on you giving more than you received. That chapter is closed. What's coming back into your life is not meant to repair the past. It's meant to free the future. There's a difference. If money returns, or benefits reopen, or resources find their way back to you, notice what your body does before your mind reacts. Does it tighten at the thought of fixing old wounds? Does it feel pulled toward places that once drained you? That's your inner scale asking for care, because new energy does not belong in old fractures. It belongs in open space. You don't owe your past another investment. You already paid in patience, silence, and restraint. You don't need to revisit what broke you just to feel whole again. This is about choosing differently now. Real freedom doesn't arrive as excess. It arrives as choice. The choice to rest without guilt, to slow down without explanation, to say no without rehearsing your reasons in your head. The choice to build a life that feels balanced on the inside, not just reasonable on the outside. That is the gift being offered here. Libra, you are not meant to carry correction on your back anymore. You are meant to live inside it. That means letting go of the urge to compensate, to smooth things over, to fix what is no longer yours to manage. Imagine this next chapter like fresh ground after a long clearing. The debris has been removed. The air feels different. There's nothing you need to prove to the soil before planting something new. You don't build on ruins, you build on space. And this time, what you create gets to reflect who you are now, not who you were when you were trying to hold everything together. You've learned discernment. You've learned restraint. You've learned how to stand still without collapsing inward. Those lessons don't disappear when things improve. They guide you. So when the opportunity comes, whether it's financial or structural or symbolic, let it move through you without urgency. Ask yourself not what it can repair, but what it can support. Support your peace. Support your time. Support the life that doesn't require constant adjustment to remain fair. As this awareness settles, you may feel something new. A calm confidence that doesn't need reinforcement. A sense that you're no longer building from lack, but from clarity. That's the sign you're doing this right. And as we move gently forward, there's one final layer waiting, because when balance returns and freedom opens, something else becomes possible. Not externally, internally. The moment when you realize you no longer need to guard yourself against the future. Stay with me. The closing of this story doesn't arrive with an ending. It arrives with a beginning you're finally ready to trust. Before we let this moment settle, Libra, there's one last thing I want you to hold gently. Not as a warning, as an invitation. What comes next will not announce itself the way you might expect. There will be no dramatic music, no sudden rush, no sign demanding your attention. It will arrive quietly, so quietly that it could be mistaken for nothing at all. A message you almost delete, a number you don't recognize, an envelope that blends into the rest of your day. And here's why I'm telling you this now, because you've spent years training yourself to stay composed, to move past things quickly, to assume that if something truly mattered, it would arrive louder. But that's not how balance returns. Balance respects timing. It respects readiness. It respects the strength you built when you learned how to wait without hardening. If you ignore the next sign, nothing bad happens. Life won't punish you. But something subtle will be missed. Not externally, internally. You would be dismissing the same inner knowing that carried you through the long stretch when answers were delayed. The same intuition that kept you steady when nothing made sense yet. And I don't want that for you. Because justice does not rush. And it does not arrive late. It arrives precisely when you no longer need it to save you, only to meet you. That is maturity. That is balance. This moment is not about fixing the past. It's about acknowledging that you have grown into someone who can receive without fear, without suspicion, without shrinking yourself to stay safe. The scale is not swinging wildly anymore. It is settling. And notice how calm that feels. You don't need to prepare. You don't need to rehearse. You don't need to anticipate every possible outcome. All that is asked of you now is presence, awareness, a willingness to pause instead of pass by. Because Libra, this is not about chance. And it never was. The delay you once questioned shaped you into someone who understands fairness at a deeper level, not as a rule, as a state of being. And now that state is returning to you. If there is one thing I want you to remember after this moment fades, it's this. You are not being corrected. You are being acknowledged. What was once left unanswered is finally finding its way back. Not to reopen anything, but to close it with grace. So when that quiet sign arrives, whatever form it takes. Let yourself stop, just for a breath, and trust what you feel before you analyze it. That pause is where balance lives. And as you move forward from here, know this: you are not waiting anymore. You are meeting something that has been moving toward you just as patiently as you move toward yourself. The scale is being set, not for the world, not for anyone else, for you. And this time, Libra, it stays. Before you go, Libra, let this moment rest with you for just a little longer. Because what you've been listening to isn't only a message, it's a reminder, a quiet one, that balance doesn't disappear forever. It only waits until you're ready to receive it without fear. If something in your chest feels lighter right now, if your breath feels slower, that's not imagination. That's recognition. You didn't come this far to miss what's arriving next. You came this far because you learned how to stay gentle without giving up your truth. Because you learned how to wait without closing your heart. And that matters more than you know. So if this message reached you at the right moment, leave a comment below. Not for explanation, just a simple sign that you felt it too. That helps this space stay alive. It helps other Libras find what they didn't know they were looking for. If you haven't already, take a second to like this video and subscribe, not just to support the channel, but to stay connected to what's unfolding for you. Because this story doesn't end here. Trust yourself, Libra, especially in the quiet moments, especially when something arrives softly. That's where your intuition speaks most clearly. This is a season of correction, of gentle justice, of balance returning without struggle. And the next message will take us even deeper into what's being restored and what you're being invited to build now that the weight has lifted. So stay close. The journey continues, and the universe is not finished speaking with you yet.